What's up, guys? Daniel Moffat here. So here we're taking a look at my 87 CR500 motor, and you're just gonna kind of like hang out with me as I freshen her up. But first, I want to kind of show you something. Let's take a look. So I don't know. You know, there's like these two holes. There's one like right there, and there's one right there. And I just noticed this, but they're like, let's see if my camera will focus. They're kind of cracked a little. Like there's cracks, like. This one looks like it runs all the way to the edge of this little sidewall. I don't even know what this hole's for. Like, back pressure for the air is my guess, maybe? Maybe like a via for fluids, like there's no oil. It's in the gas, so probably just air. But this one's got like, you can see a little crack on that one too. I don't know. Is that a big deal? Is that MBD? I don't think it I don't know. I don't think that hole is load bearing. It's not like a bolt goes in there or anything, so. I don't know, it's weird. If anyone knows, drop a comment. If you're some kind of CR500 guru. So I think you can probably tell we've been cleaning up this face. This is the same motor that was, and you can still see some of the red stuff that was RTV apocalypsed. There's like, it's flush with this. There's just like a little divot around the posts, and like, I don't know. I think it'll be fine. It just made like a little rubber gasket around it, and I think that's fine. But the rest of it, I got good. I got cleaned off in preparation for the new gaskets. Yeah, we cleaned this one off. You can still see there's like little micro scoring in it and stuff too. Some of those probably from me cleaning off the old gasket, but a lot of it was already there, just from being a 40-plus-year-old motor. But I think the gaskets will help take out if there's any tiny little microscopic scoring, I think the gaskets will pick that up, and it won't make like a channel for the water to run out. So I have gaskets like this. I've even heard that if you're like a true Billy Badass, and you can like surface these perfectly, and then like polish them, and you do that to like, whoops, you do that to like both sides, like if you did that to this side also, then maybe not with the top one, but I know you can do it with where this bottom gasket goes. If you get this surface really clean and polished, you don't need a gasket. You can just match it straight up, and it'll actually increase your compression. So I've heard, because you're like taking like, half a millimeter out of the throw of the piston, since you're making it a tiny bit shorter. But yeah, we're not gonna. Okay, yeah, good. I cleaned this one up pretty good too, and you can kind of still see the wording from the old gasket, but if you look, you can kind of see a little polish on it, a little shine. Much cleaner than whoever rebuilt this motor got it. So I have a new gasket set, which is right here. Let me see, I think oh yeah. Comes with a sticker and everything. Committed gaskets! So yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna toss these on right now, actually. Little bladey blade right there. So yeah, this looks like everything, the jug. This is a top end gasket set, so this is the one for the exhaust. So we're gonna just kind of set that to the side. I'm not putting the exhaust. I haven't got the exhaust in the mail just yet, so but I'm excited for the exhaust. I paid $600 for it, but it's like a PSI, an ISP, something like that. Some kind of like fancy, like racing exhaust that was stock. Well, not stock, but like you can't get it anymore. It was off of a hill climbing bike. Yeah, look at these. These are like 3 metal plates, these metal gaskets. So where does this go? So this is the top one, I think. Yeah, that goes on the top. And from my other video, it looks like I was wrong. I really thought that the dude who rebuilt this, like there was water in the oil, and I thought it came from him not drilling out these vias, because I thought he just like made the gaskets himself, basically. But if you look in here, you'll see, just like in that video where I was talking shit, these there's definitely holes drilled in. There's just little holes drilled in these vias. So I don't know. Maybe all the water pressure in the whole bike like goes through these tiny little holes. But it's like, I just don't understand why they even bother making the channels all huge. And then, like, all the water just pisses through these tiny little holes. That's probably just to give the water a chance to actually heat up in the head. I don't know. It seems weird to me, but it's not wrong. It's not wrong like that other one. So that's what made me think. That's what made me realize that it's the water pump gasket, or the one of the seal for the rod that holds the gear that spins the water pump. There's a little impeller on the back, and between that gear and the impeller, there's a couple of seals. You'll see. Don't worry. This looks like our seal right here. I can't stress this enough, just how clean and smooth and dirt-free you really want these to be, because it's gonna affect how well the gasket, the jug will seal. And that'll kind of change. It can change several things. It can change your compression, how well the bike runs. You know, you just don't want anything to leak, really. Cool. And that seems to fit pretty good. Pretty good. Now, we're not going to put no red RTV on this, since we've cleaned it all really well. Chances are the person who put this on initially just didn't clean these surfaces. Maybe they even put a new gasket on, just tossed it on. But like, if you had a little piece of crud on there and you put that gasket on there, you know, it makes like, you know, here's your piece of crud and here's the gasket. There's little holes on either side of that crud where like water will seep out. So sometimes people take it back off, slather both sides with that RTV to kind of take out those little gaps on either side. But really, you don't need to do that. Just clean it. Just clean each surface. You know, pretty good too. You know, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, obviously, perfect is better. I mean, you could even take these to a machine shop and have them like, well, you wouldn't want them to take a lot off, but if that had to be done, you could. So here's another important thing you want to watch out on these. So I was looking and I was like, oh, this guy's got these piston ring openings too close to each other. So I was gonna twist this one this way and the back one this way, because I know they're usually supposed to be far apart. But if you look really closely, there's a dowel right there, and the piston rings have a notch out on both sides. So when you squeeze these piston rings together, they'll close perfectly around, and you can kind of see the notch for that dowel. There is a dowel in there. So yeah, when you compress them, they have to be around that dowel. Otherwise, if you have it like over the dowel and you compress it, well, the dowel will stop it from sitting flat, and so you'll crunch the motor. You will just absolutely crunch the motor. A little dowel is to keep those piston rings from spinning. So you want to make sure you have the piston rings lined up with the dowel. And I'm going to tell people out there, if you're working on your engine and like you have a two-stroke like this and you think your motor has shit the bed and you're like, well, my bike's done. 9 out of 10 times, maybe not 9 out of 10, but more often than not, if it's a two-stroke, replace these piston rings. You don't even need a new piston. Just replace these rings. These rings are like the apex seals on like an RX-8. Like, it's the thing that comes into contact with the engine sides, the sides of the engine wall in here, the most. It sees the most action. So honestly, if you're gonna replace anything in a two-stroke, getting low compression, you're getting really smoky oil, piston rings. Replace these piston rings. This one has two, since it's a big chungus, but most two-strokes really only have one piston ring. And we're going to be careful. We don't want to gall up our gasket materials. So we're going to be... This is the trickiest part. They make little tools for this, but I do not have that tool. So maybe I will just grab a zip tie. Okay, that wasn't too bad. As you can see, they give you these little like tabs on the top one, and there's a bottom one, and there's like room where you can kind of like squeeze the piston rings on the side to get them to fall in those little nooks. Say hi, Resky. So yeah, so you can get those once you have them in that little Once you have them in there, you can see they're compressed. You can just kind of... Let me back this up a little. Yeah, you can just kind of slide it in over. And you can see our... Bada bing, bada boom. There we go, and there's the piston sitting in there, and let's give it a little, give it a spin. Oh, well, it's a little harder to spin than that. Forgot there's a clutch in there. But yeah, I mean, it's in there. Once I get the bolts on, I'll spin it over. But yeah, no more RTV. Woo! Okay, let's do the top next. So cool. This is what I love about two-strokes. I mean, they're just deceptively simple, truly. Seems like a much nicer... I don't even think the one I pulled off was metal. I think the one I pulled off of it was like, maybe it was metal. Well, see, now here's the $64,000 question. For me, at least, anyway. How do you know how to line the holes up? I'll tell you what, I'm gonna have to look that up. Because, I mean, does it matter which one you put the big ones on? I wouldn't think it mattered if they were all this size, but they're not all this size, so give me one moment. I'm gonna look it up real quick. Okay, no problem. I looked at a parts diagram, and it shows these two holes being on the exhaust side. So we're just gonna go ahead and just like... Oh! Fantastic. And I'm pretty sure that's how it was when I took it off, too, now that I remember, and I think about it. So, yeah, I think that's right. So then... Oh, this is another really interesting thing about this head. I wonder if it'll, like... What if I'm just feeling spicy and I just want to decide to put it on, like... Will it go on other ways? Oh, not really. Oh, gosh. Well, this is what you get for feeling I don't even... Like, how did I even do that? I literally just set it on top. Wow. Okay, well... Don't do that, apparently. Are you fucking kidding me? Okay. We're gonna take a quick break for technical difficulties. Don't put the head on like that. Fun fact, so the head is the head bolts are not equidistant apart. Ugh, God. Thought they were, but nope. So as clean as possible. Get away that little tiny aluminum shaving that I definitely just put there from fucking around with this thing. Okay, but it should be fine. I mean, yeah, if you put it on like this, it's got a little bit of play, but apparently if you misalign the hole, it won't even... apparently it won't go on good. Okay. And this is where I'm going to stop for the moment. Actually, just kidding. Because I left the bolts in my garage. I left those top bolts in my garage. But I do need to do this also, which is the water pump. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm gonna go grab my tools. I'll be right back. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and take the water pump off. Pretty sure this was the culprit for why the water, or the oil, was full to the brim with water. Could have been these two seals, that's why we're replacing them, but it's just good practice. I don't think it was them. Fairly certain it wasn't, actually. And like this seal is also probably no good, to be honest. I mean, there should be a seal on this. There might be. That might be what that little thin layer is. Kind of grody looking. We're just going to... We're going to zip this bad boy off. We're going to take this off. Takes a 10 millimeter, and just so everyone knows, it is not a crown across thread. It's not a counter thread, counterclockwise thread or whatever. It's just a regular lefty loosey, righty tighty to take this thing off. And I wasn't sure. And an impact works good. You don't even have to hold the engine. See? Just like that. Just like that. There's a little tiny washer too. I'm gonna save that. Copper washer, in fact. And then, yeah, let's get a look in here. So those, you can see there's like a rubber seal in there. There's actually two rubber seals in there. There's one on the back side, or yeah, that's the oil seal. And then there's that front side one we're seeing, which is this bad boy, water pump seal. So this one goes on the back to stop the oil coming in on that shaft, and this one goes right here to stop the water from going back in to the oil. My guesses are, since this is a 40-plus-year-old engine, is that the rubber components in here are just worn out. So we're gonna go ahead and pull those bad boys out, and I'll pull you back here after I get those out. Okay, so this has to come off because one of the seals comes off from the front, but it looks like the other seal of the gear has to come off of the shaft, and then you have to pull the seal off of the shaft because it looks like there's a little wall right here, a little retainer. I thought it was like a C-clip, but like now it's like where the weep hole comes out. So yeah, it looks like the other seal has to be pulled out from the other side. So we're gonna have to take this. We're gonna have to take this off. Here's the clutch basket cover off. This might be magnesium. Feels pretty stinking light. It's magnesium or aluminum. Honestly, I don't know, it doesn't really say. Sometimes, some of the pieces I have of that are magnesium are usually stamped magnesium. It's gold a little bit on that side. I don't know. Seal seems to be, needs to be cleaned. Alright, so I got the side cover off. This gasket's muff garbage right now, apparently. So that's okay, I already ordered a new one. I double checked before I pulled it off. So I mean that was probably leaking a little oil too. I didn't see any, but well, if that seal wasn't bad before, well, it is now. So here's what we're looking for: the water pump on the back. So now I'm just gonna try to pull that off, I think, and we'll be back in a second. Okay, so there's a bearing on the back after I pull it out, and then the seals between that bearing and the crankcase. So we have a 1/2 inch or a 13 millimeter socket, and a good old 17 wrench. And we're just gonna, yeah, okay. Basically, we're gonna do that. All right, both seals replaced. That one could probably go down a little bit farther, but got the washer back on there. Spin the little impeller on. Righty tighty. Okay, that's one tight pump. Turn it with the gear. No wiggle. I think that'll keep the water and the oil separated after replacing both those seals. After having to take it out and put it back in the right way. Alright, so here we got the studs. So this one you can't really get at with a socket because there's kind of this thing overhanging. This one you can. So I got two nuts here. One of them is kind of rounded. and the other is really rounded, apparently. So instead of doing the sensible thing and buying new bolts, we're just gonna go ahead and we're gonna put this more roundeder bolt on the back where it can be hit at with a socket. And we're gonna put this just kind of sort of round. I mean, that's okay. Bolt back in this harder to reach area. See, you can only hit this with a spanner. This one in the back you can hit with the cutest little ratchet that ever existed. Tighten all these head bolts. It's pretty hard to over torque these bolts with a barely no leverage. I like this little Shrimpcules ratchet. It's my favorite. Could sneak it up your butt in a prison if you needed to. Don't recommend that, but you know, don't try that at home. There you go. But you know, you could if you had to. Just kind of going like a little. I already hit it with the star pattern a few times, so the heads were snug pretty good. I'm just kind of going in a circle and just kind of hand snug it down a little bit at a time. Oh yeah, see, and it keeps. You know you're done when you come around and you can apply almost no pressure, and the bolts don't really move. They kind of, because every time you're tightening down the other ones, you're creating a little more room for the other ones to kind of loosen them. So that's why you can do this 5, 6, 7 times. Apply the same amount of pressure. You're just trying to kind of even it out. You don't want to wail on it. You can always over tighten them, or you can always tighten them more, so you don't want to over tighten them. I have personally stripped out a steel bolt on an aluminum case, so I'm apprehensive. Okay, that should be good for now. So here's a pretty clean hole. You can see is a little bit of shine to it. This hole looked something kind of like this crusty junk right here, but I've been using a pen and I just pulled the ink out. I've been using the pen to kind of scoop this stuff off. And you know, plastic can't really scratch or gall aluminum unless you're some kind of superhuman, you know. So I'm just gonna try to get this whole edge nice and polished and just as clean as I've basically gotten all of this one already. Alright, and we're back sometime later, but with one gasket in tow. We're gonna snip this guy open. Okay, one gasket de-sleeved. Now we're just gonna pop it on. You can kind of use the, and this is where we find out if I indeed do have an 87. Okay, I do. Okay. Well, I guess a lot of them are similar, but yeah, you can use the dowel pins to kind of like hang it on. Some guys put like some kind of grease or that red RTV, but I don't mess with anything like that. So we got our water pump seal reinstalled and our impeller back on. You can feel it spins snugly, but still well. That's because the seals hold it a little better, hopefully. So again, you just want to get both sides. You know, let's get a good like swing, like little like light blade hit that, so you can see just how clean this side is, and the other side is just as clean. The side that the other I was using... here it is. I was using this. It's just like a little, like... It's the piece of a pen that, like, holds it to your pocket. Little plastic piece. I just snapped it off the pen. Still use the pen. And then I just, oh, excuse me. I just use this to just, like, work all this stuff off. And this is the kind of tool you're going to want to use, something plastic, because you do not want to use... This is aluminum, or some kind of aluminum magnesium alloy, so possibly even softer. So, I mean, like, even with plastic, like, this one's pretty soft. You can see it's, like, malleable, you know, bendable. Even, like, a firm plastic could probably, like, gall this if you pressed pretty hard, honestly. So, yeah, so we got this cleaned up, so now let's see, I didn't replace this seal on the outside for the Kickstarter, just because it can be replaced from the outside anyway. So we're just gonna see. So now there's like there's a little hole right there where there's a little, and that bearing spins nicely, and that's where this little nub is gonna plug into, and then we have to kind of spin the gears on the shaft to get the water pump and the gear on the drive shaft to line up. But we have to do that slowly and gently because it is the water pump has a plastic gear. We want to be, it's pretty close. We're getting there. It's not bad. We're doing okay. I'm going to move you over here just so I can get a little closer. So we're just going to spin that. Oh, okay. And the gears just intermingled. Okay. Now we're just going to, okay, make sure it's snugged down just by hand, honestly. This side's all great. So this side, a little more snug on this side because of the kickstart spindle. But I think that is possibly good enough to thread some bolts in. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to make sure these bolts are nice and clean, then I'll bring you back. Alright, so the bolts are pretty much all clean. What I really focus on is just the threads, honestly. That's really what's most important. Just kind of get any grit or gunk. I polish the heads a little bit, but yeah, don't worry about that too much. Got the rest of them right here, nice and clean. Cleaned enough, you know. They're not pristine. I could take like a wire wheel to them, but you know, they're cleaner. A little discolored, but they're not gonna gall the threads on their way in now. We're just gonna thread them all in first. Just threading them all in, that's all. A lot of guys talk about taking engines apart and putting different bolts in baggies and whatnot so they know what goes where. But honestly, just, you know, that's too small. There's only 3 size bolts. It's just a lot of, some are like a hair longer than others. This one felt a little long. Just pop this sucker in. Looky there, that's the right bolt. Some people like to be really niddly, and you know what? That's probably really good, honestly. I am just not quite like that. I just like to stick things in different holes and see what works. See if these little ones go on the bottom. I'd say so. Is that the drain bolt? No? Let's see, let's find these medium ones. Let's see what these are first. Yeah, I'd say this long medium one goes right here. Yeah. We're just gonna thread them in too. Medium one down here. Oh, see, it's a little crunchy. You should be able to hand spin everything. So we'll take that out. That one felt a little crunchy. I'll try this one. a little less crunchy. Maybe there's some stuff in the threads. Maybe the threads on the bolt are a little galled. You have to be really, really careful because this is steel bolts and aluminum casings. So you are at great risk of threading things. This one, that feels comfortable there. Yeah. Let's see. That one or this one. Yeah. Alright, let's see. I think. Yeah. Yeah. That feels good. Yeah, that one was too short. Just found another bolt. A little longer. This one too. Not enough spinning in it. See, this one's a little longer. So we're gonna use this one. Yeah, it's better. You wanna have to spin it a little bit. Okay. Tighten these little guys with your hand. Let's tighten one on this side so it doesn't lift up. Just go ahead and you should be able to hand thread it all the way against the back of the case. All of them. They should all be able to thread in flat against the case with almost no resistance. If you have to get a ratchet to get this to go in, take the bolt back out, clean it, blow the threads out, clean the threads, put the bolt back in with your hand. If you have to use a tool, you're gonna break it. At least for this step. You use tools in a second, but we're not there yet. We're just snugging her up. So go ahead and snug all those bolts. Now comes step 2. Take a socket that fits it. In most cases it's gonna be an 8mm, at least for ours it is. And now you're gonna just use that socket to twist these in as far as they'll go. And with that, we have taken up the rest of the remaining slack in the gap. Oh, let me detach. In the engine casing. See, that's sitting pretty flush. There's a little gap before. I had to, even with my hand pressure, I couldn't do that. But just a socket on it, and doing them all, going in order. Just taking all the play out with your hand. Let me plug this back in. Alright, yeah. So same thing, yeah. Just all these bolts on the outside. And you'll notice I don't have these in yet because I want to make sure that after I get this on that this surface is clean too. So we're not there just yet. But we'll get there, don't you worry. And you'll notice that as you tighten up a lot of them, the ones you've gone back to are now re-loose. So you're just gonna go ahead and just keep snugging. Keep snugging those bolts. And this is, I'm gonna teach you how to do this without a torque wrench. Pay close attention, kids. Because you know what? You're not always, in most circumstances, you're not gonna have access to a torque wrench. Yeah, you might have to fix this in the field, you never know. I don't have to. I just choose not to use a torque wrench because I think they're for girls. Okay, so now that we've got them both hand tight and then socket tight, now we're going to take a ratchet with as little arm length as humanly possible, and we're going to put it on there. Because you know what? Normally in a ratchet you want it to have a long lever so you get good leverage, so you can put a lot of pressure on it. But in our cases, you can always tighten the bolt more, but if you over tighten it, well, you ruin the motor. Or you have to shoot a helicoil or do some fancy welding or put a bigger bolt, but all of that sucks. So just get yourself a teeny tiny little ratchet, enough chatter, and then just same thing we're doing before. And notice how I hold the ratchet really pretty loosely. And this is so important. I can't stress how important this is because, like, when I first did this on my CR85, my 04, I ruined it. I was like, yeah, it can't be tight enough. Yeah. Broke the bolts in the casing. And I tell you what, it's not a happy day. 'Tis not. Yeah, do it with your left hand if you have to. Use your weak arm. Go in a circle. Keep tightening. It's like a torque wrench, but instead of clicking, a baby cries. Oh, see, there we go. Perfect torque. I'm using both hands, but again, it's because I'm not getting very good leverage on this. You know, and that's great. You don't want to accidentally get great leverage. And then you're going to ruin one of these bolts. And then what I would recommend, and I'm sure many other people won't, is that after we get this on and we get the engine together, is that we're going to put oil in it and we're going to see if it leaks. If it doesn't immediately leak oil, then we're going to start the bike and we're going to let it idle for a second, and we're going to see if we can do the same thing. We can tighten these bolts a little bit more, just a little bit more while it's warm, by hand, and then we'll leave it. And if it's not leaking, that's perfect. We want these bolts just tight enough, just humanly tight enough to not back out from the vibration, and to keep the case tight enough against, keep this cover tight enough against the case that it doesn't leak oil. That's it. Doesn't need to be tight. Doesn't need to be over tight. Doesn't need to be torqued. Just needs to do those two things. Cool. Bada bing, bada boom. Okay. Now we're gonna go ahead and replace the gasket on this clutch cover. This feels magnesium. If I had to guess, I'd say this is magnesium. I don't see a magnesium stamp on it. Just based on the weight, it feels a little lighter than aluminum. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and peel out the old one, which might be okay. And I've had some shade tree mechanics tell me that you can soak these seals, if you want to go real hobo bum style, to soak these seals in acetone, and it'll plumpen them up, and you can reuse them after you soak them in acetone. Would not recommend that. $4. Here's the number. Buy it on Motorsport. We're gonna take out this old one right now. This old seal. Right there. Okay, so again, I just kind of use my little plastic, my little DIY plastic spreader. Just kind of boink! Toss that into oblivion. And then just clean it up. Okay. And I gotta be careful because you kind of come full circle on these things. Okay, BRB. Okay, very delicately put back on. This is the hardest part. Yeah. Get this piece of paper towel out of there. Sick. That was definitely upside down. See, now this is the worst part for me, because now it's like, did I do it right? Did I pinch the seal? God. And now I feel like I have to take it off to look at it to make sure I've done it correctly. But you know the second I peel it off, and you know I've done it correctly, that the seal will fall in, causing me to have done it incorrectly. But we're going to do it anyway. Because I think once you have it flat against there, you can kind of like press it on there a little bit more, like, and I'll kind of like line it up with the little things. Yeah, it still kind of wants to like jump out, so gosh, it was probably in there correctly, but you want to know what like my worst fear is? This is my worst fear. But the seal is not good. Okay. So now we have that on there. Whoop. Oh. Dropping it and losing our seal. That obviously doesn't go there. Okay. Little bolt action. So that means that this probably definitely goes right there. Got one more big super long bolt. I guess it goes on one of the water pump bolts. BRB. It's a good sign when you have bolts left over, right? So we're gonna snug these down, similar to the same manner. And you can do it with a socket as long as you're not like pushing through it, pushing through the crunchies in the threads with the socket. Just for expediency's sake. Oh, see, I'm doing it. I'm doing what I said not to do. Felt it crunchy and I just pushed right through it. But I won't tell if you want. Alright. See, that's questionable. See how snug that got. If you have a bolt that is truly just too long for the hole it's intended, you can kind of like, yeah, see, that's the difference. If I had just been like, well, maybe I just need to wail on it a little more, well, that hole was zeroed out, I could have split the case. So yeah, you can, so this probably goes, yeah, probably like right there. Probably. Now watch, this thing's gonna piss oil like a sieve. Watch. I guess we'll find out. We'll find out together. Okay. It's tight enough. Move on down to the wussy ratchet. Start moving in a circle. Oh, sorry. Star pattern. There, is that better? And then the same thing, we're just gonna go in a circle, not apply too much pressure, because the chances are these will be loose when the engine gets hot anyway. We'll have to retighten them a tiny little bit. Okay. And like when you're like You're like, just one more turn, just one more turn. Just stop. You don't need one more turn. You can turn it later. You might already have it tight enough. I personally know what the breaking point is for these, just by muscle memory from doing it wrong enough times. But if you don't, I would recommend just, you know, like, if it's on there, just fill it full of oil, see if it's tight. No need to whale these down. It's possible that I don't even have that seal on there properly, and I might have to just take it off again. Hopefully not. Almost definitely not, but, you know. There's always that nagging sensation in the back of your skull. Okay, so now we're going to focus on this. I'll bring you back in a second. I'm not a simple man. I am a simple man, actually. You'll have to fault me. I bought these 2 gaskets for this. You can't fault me. You'll have to forgive me. You'll have to pardon my twisted tongue also. This has a gasket on it, and like the picture in the diagram shows like this metal baffle coming out, and then there's like a seal between it, and it said it was the same seal, so it says there's 2 of these seals in it, but like honestly, like looking at this, it doesn't look god awful, and I don't remember it leaking. And I've kind of like cleaned up the inside a little bit, like, you know, it's got a tad bit of stuff, but, you know, I don't want to ruin the seal, because it does have one. And I'm really tempted to just put it back on. I'm going to do that. And if it doesn't work, I can just take it off, put this new seal on. So yeah, for now, put this back on. Alright, we cleaned it off pretty good. It might leak. We have new seals. If it does, I'll come back and I'll hit it with the old gunk blaster some more. You know. But I think it's okay. This will probably take up quite a bit of slop. If I'm guessing correctly. They're pretty thick. It looks like it's like some kind of cardboard material. The baby agrees. Yeah, I do kind of want to clean it up more because there's kind of some rusty crusties on the edge where the gasket meets this thingy, but I also don't want to beat this gasket up. Call that a happy compromise. Put a little oil on it. Should probably fill this up and drain it full like vinegar or something. Drain it a couple times. Although, I guess I should look to see if vinegar will rot the plastic seals, the rubber seals. It probably won't, but I guess I could look it up first. I'd hate to corrode the plastic seals on the water pump that I just installed with vinegar. Probably be okay. I could probably use diluted vinegar. That'd probably help, eat up any rust in there. But I also got to be careful because I've heard that there's bimetallic corrosion is rife in these water pumps since they're made of basically like 3 different materials supposedly. It's like steel, aluminum, and magnesium, and they don't get along well together. Hang on, talking far too much. I'm putting the wrong bolts in the wrong hole. So that one threaded in too quickly. So that one almost definitely needs that. That's better. That's a little better. Probably means I have a bolt on the bottom that I shouldn't. Okay, and we're gonna find out which one of these has a tiny little bolt in it. 5th try's a charm. Only had to try 4 other bolts before I found the one that was a little too short in the case. So yeah, that fits in there. I thought that one was a little suspect. I just didn't remember it immediately. So yeah. So don't be afraid to go back and undo all the bolts you put in previously, because you know what? It's not a big deal. Like I said, I didn't have to undo all of them. I did 5 of them. A little annoying. Gotta re-torque them. but it's okay. Twist this one on now. Twist this one on now. It's the right length. So yeah, so okay, I went looking for a bolt all over the engine, and it was right here that needed to be switched over. But we got it. Make sure these are all nice and snug as a bug. That's a little drain bolt. We'll put that one in last. There's probably a little copper washer for it somewhere kicking around. Copper is a good gasket material because copper is actually a very soft metal as well as being very ductile. So it kind of conforms well to the materials that you're trying to seal with it. Like a magnesium case and a steel bolt kind of sandwiches a little out. Makes a really good seal. We're gonna go back and kind of, yeah, see this one. This one's a little loose. Go back and get this other one I undid too. Do that one. Tiny little bit more. Okay. You have to readjust your grip to tighten it more. It's tight enough. Unless there's something in the way. Yeah, see, fine. That's almost too good a grip. Okay, but these are good. If it leaks a little bit more water, well, normally I'd say I'll add a little bit more pressure to them, but since we kind of just reused the janky seal that was on it, it could just be that the seal's bad and there's no amount of tightening it that would make it stop leaking. So in this water pump scenario, if it's leaking a little bit of oil, don't wail on these bolts until it stops, because the bolt holes will fail before the water pump will stop leaking if you have a bad seal. If you know you have a good seal and you just need a tiny bit more pressure to make it stop like weeping out the sides, okay, go cautiously. Go cautiously, and remember you can always tighten more. Can't untighten. Can't unstrip. Okay. And we're going to call that. And if there's one we've missed tightening a little bit, well, we're going to go back and see. I can't really twist any of these anymore very easily. If I had a longer bar, don't put like a cheater bar on to, you know, wail on these. See, none of these are really moving. I'm just kind of applying just an even force to them. So if one was really loose, we tighten a little more. But yeah. Perfect. Okay, so the next thing is I noticed that this shifter, I took the bolt out of the bottom of the shifter, an 8mm. So now we're just kind of tapping this really grungy shifter off. We're going to clean it. We're also going to inspect the seal down here, which, wow, that looks pretty gross as well. So chances are that that is also installed from the outside. So I'm going to put oil in it before I replace that, but if I was being really thorough, I would just order that seal and just replace it from the outside also. I don't think you have to split the engine casing to replace that seal. If you do, that's kind of silly. But we'll see. We'll put oil in it and we'll run it and we'll see if it leaks out of this. But in the meantime, it could just be kind of grungy for the age, but chances are this will. I mean, it doesn't look awful. You hear that? Banging against that little back wall. Not terrible. Not terrible end play. Tip it up a little bit more so I can see it. Yeah. We'll see. We'll see how that works. Oh, excuse me. See if I can ever fit this shifter back on. How many gears are these things? Let's see. That's first gear. That's neutral. That's second. Third. Fourth. Are these things only 4 gears? First gear. Second. Third. Fourth. Oh, that was a clunk. Clunks in 4. And then that's it. Caps out at 4. I don't know. We'll see. I'm gonna look up and see if they're only 4 gears. Okay, so I looked it up and it does have 5 gears. So the problem is I think we're okay. So that's first right here. Second. Yeah, see, that's the problem. You gotta. That's first. That's neutral. Still neutral. That's second. That's third. That's fourth. And then to go to fifth, you gotta move this. You gotta like roll a little bit. Theoretically, you're supposed to be moving while you're shifting gears. So it does have 5 gears. You just gotta like helps if you turn the gears a tiny smidgen. So yeah, so all 5 gears work and it shifts really good. We just might need to fix that seal on the bottom, but we'll burn that bridge before we cross it. The gear shifter, oh man, you can beat the crap out of this thing. It doesn't matter how tight you tense this thing. It's replaceable. Like most things in life. Easily replaceable. So yeah. I mean, don't go too tight, obviously. I'm just joking, but, you know. You don't have to be as sensitive with the engine casings. You won't ruin the engine if you over-tighten, you know, just the bolt on the shifter. Here's a pro tip. If you're going to sell a blown, clapped-out motor, and you don't want people to be able to check the oil, just make sure, like, when you sell the motor, you just break that off so, you know, people can't open up your oil and see how, like, ruined it is, because this is the cap I bought for it. The one that came with it was, you know, like I was saying before. Shwing! Clever, clever, clever. Install this working oil plug. Or transmission fluid plug. Pardon me, transfer fluid. Transfer case plug. Also, this is the water pump bolt with that little. We went ahead and cleaned up the brass little washer, so we're gonna go ahead and reinstall that also in the water pump. This is just a drain bolt to let you drain all the fluid out of your radiator system. It's a 10mm. I don't feel like looking for a socket, and a wrench fits on this just fine. So little, not super snug, just snug enough to kind of warp into that copper a little bit. And again, this is on the outside casing for the water pump, so won't ruin the engine if you strip this one, but just again, be a little careful. And then we have one more drain plug bolt for the coolant system in the jug. And this one has another washer on it also, a copper one. Thoroughly clean the old-fashioned way. Still got a little shine to it, so that'll work. Just gonna install it right here, and these drain plug bolts are both 10s. You can use the same lazy wrench. Again, okay, this one you do not want to be tight on. You want this to leak when you first start it up, and you want to be able to tighten it to the point where it stops. Because this one is a steel bolt on an aluminum casting, and if you want to try to find a CR500 head for less than the price of a crappy used car, well, good luck. I say wailing on it a little bit more. But yeah, that's good. Delicate, delicate, delicate. Okay, so now we're going to put the exhaust flange on and the new gasket that we opened previously. Just kind of like cleaned and oiled this with vegetable oil. It's going to smoke when I first start it up, but you know, it's fine. Just keep it from rusting. Not like that, but like that. See how those holes line up. We'll put this little spring holder, and I like that the spring holder comes off. I like that the spring holder is serviceable. That's nice. We're going to attach that right there. And we're going to put that on, and we got 3 bolts right here that we're going to put into them. I'm not sure if these are the right ones, but they seem like they pretty much fit. We're going to thread them through by hand and see if they aren't too long. If they're too long, they'll hit that back wall before they're fully snugged. They might be a tiny bit too long. I might have to find some different ones. So again, we just kind of finger tightened them. And now we're just going to go back and get them with the socket. I oiled these also, but they're still a little crispy because the exhaust from the exhaust port kind of gets down in the thread holes. Kind of sort of lubricates it, but kind of makes it snug a little too. It's like gummy liquid graphite. Sort of technically helps it spin, but also kind of grabs it a little bit. And I think these are going to be just the right bolts, just the right length. Okay, and same deal. We got steel bolts on aluminum casting, so just kind of tighten these this one still spins kind of easily. Tighten it a little more. And you really want to make sure that it's getting harder to drive in, because it's pressing against this well enough, and not just because it's running out of, it's hitting the back of the hole. You just want to make sure it's not pressing into the castings. This one should be okay. Okay, cool. And there you go. Alright, and here she is in all her glory with the expansion chamber on. With the PSI expansion chamber. It's a little close, to be honest. I only got one spring on, because man, those springs are freaking hard to get on. But yeah, here she is, you know, in all her majesty. Oh, I'm so excited. Stay tuned, because we're about to test drive my work and see if it works. See if this, honestly, this expansion chamber fits a little, it doesn't fit as well as I thought it would, to be honest. It's huge, for one. It says it fit all year CRs, which I'm skeptical of, but, I mean, it did fit around the mouth, and the spring fits it, so, I mean, technically fits. I mean, it's on there pretty snug, which is one spring, so we'll see. It's a little close right here, to this, like, where the gasket sticks out. It's touching it right there, in fact. I don't know if you can see that, but I mean, that's fine. But what's not super fine is that it's touching right there, so that might have to be, it'll probably sit a little differently on the frame. But yeah, now all I have to do, oh yeah, I have the slip for it too, hold on. And there's the slip. Type 2 DG slip-on exhaust on a, I don't really like this. This looks ugly right here. I don't know, maybe this wasn't made for this. Maybe the guy just sold it as a set. I mean, I would have paid $600 just for the expansion chamber, because it was literally the only singular expansion chamber I could find at the moment. And you know what? She looked good. She really looked good. So stay tuned. If you like this kind of stuff, stay tuned. I just gotta weld the frame up next. So subscribe and stay tuned.